In open water, a body either catches what it needs or it starves. There is nowhere to hide, no branch to climb, no rock to duck behind. Only distance, speed, and the cost of pushing flesh through water. A shark is a fish. It breathes water. Its skeleton is made of cartilage, not bone. It has no lungs, no hair, no warm blood regulated to a fixed temperature. It has been in the ocean for longer than trees have existed on Earth. A dolphin is a mammal. It breathes air. It nurses its young with milk. Roughly 50 million years ago, its ancestors had 4 legs and walked on dry ground. They left the land, entered the water, and never came back. An ichthyosaur was a reptile. It descended from terrestrial animals that returned to the sea during the Triassic period, more than 250 million years ago. It dominated open ocean for over 150 million years. Then it vanished. 3 animals, 3 completely different origins. A fish, a mammal, a reptile, separated by hundreds of millions of years and by every major division in the vertebrate tree. And yet, if you placed their silhouettes side by side, the smooth taper from snout to tail, the crescent-shaped caudal fin, the dorsal stabilizer, the narrow peduncle where the body meets the thrust, you could not reliably tell which was which. The ocean did not care what they were. It made them the same shape. This is not a coincidence, and it is not a metaphor. It is physics. And if you understand what water does to a body that tries to move through it at speed, you begin to understand why evolution keeps arriving at the same answer, not because it remembers the last one, but because the problem never changed. Water is roughly 800 times denser than air. Every shape that moves through it pays a tax, drag, the resistance the fluid applies against a body in motion. At low speed, drag is manageable. Almost any form can survive a slow crawl across the seafloor. But in open water, where prey is fast and dispersed, where a predator must chase, accelerate, and strike over distance, drag becomes the difference between feeding and starving. The shape that pays the lowest tax is a fusiform body, rounded at the front, widest roughly a third of the way back, then tapering smoothly to a narrow tail. At pursuit speed, even small deviations from this profile are punished. A blunter nose creates more pressure drag. A wider tail disrupts flow. A body too round pays for volume it does not need. Torpedo designers arrived at this shape by calculation. Evolution arrived at it by attrition. Hundreds of millions of years of bodies failing in water and a small number surviving. The physics do not care whether the designer has a mind. The shark got there first, or at least earliest among the lineages still breathing. The broader shark lineage extends back more than 450 million years. The modern forms most people recognize, the lamnids, the requiem sharks, the hammerheads, are far younger, but the basic fusiform architecture has been refined across a timescale that makes human civilization look like a typo. A short-fin mako cutting through open ocean at recorded bursts above 70 kilometers per hour is not a recent experiment. It is the current version of a body the ocean has been editing since before vertebrates had jaws. But speed alone does not explain what the shark became. Several lamnid species, the great white, the mako, the porbeagle, independently evolved regional endothermy. Their bodies generate metabolic heat and retain it using a countercurrent exchange system in their blood vessels, called a rete mirabile. This means specific tissues, the swimming muscles, the brain, the eyes, the stomach, run significantly warmer than the surrounding water. Not warm-blooded the way a mammal is, not thermoregulated to a constant set point, but warm enough to sustain faster muscle contraction, sharper neural processing, and more efficient digestion in cold, deep water where other predators slow down. A warm brain behind cold eyes, a fusiform body moving at pursuit speed, a sensory system that detects electrical fields, pressure waves, and chemical traces across distances most prey cannot calculate. That is the predator the open ocean selected for, and the shark held that ecological position for hundreds of millions of years. Then the reptiles entered the water, and the ocean began building the same animal again. Ichthyosaurs appeared in the early Triassic, roughly 250 million years ago. descending from terrestrial reptiles, whose identity is still debated. The earliest known forms were elongated, eel-like, clearly mid-transition, animals still finding their way into an aquatic body. But within a geologically compressed window, tens of millions of years, the architecture shifted. The limbs flattened into rigid paddles. The spine curved downward into a crescent-shaped tail fluke. The body narrowed sharply at the base of the tail. The snout elongated into a hydrodynamic beak, and the eyes expanded, in some species, to more than 20 centimeters across, among the largest eyes of any vertebrate in the fossil record. By the Middle Jurassic, an ichthyosaur like Ophthalmosaurus was functionally indistinguishable in profile from a modern dolphin. Not related to a dolphin, not descended from anything remotely close to one. A reptile, air-breathing by necessity, terrestrial by deep origin, reshaped into the same torpedo the shark had been wearing for 200 million years before it arrived. The convergence did not stop at silhouette. Fossil bone microstructure in several ichthyosaur genera shows growth patterns more consistent with elevated metabolic rates than with typical cold-blooded reptiles. Oxygen isotope analyses of their teeth have pointed in the same direction, body temperatures potentially well above ambient water. The evidence is not settled. Paleontology rarely hands you certainty on physiology from bone alone, but the signal is persistent across multiple independent studies. The ocean may not only have demanded the same exterior shape, it may have demanded the same internal engine, warm tissue powering fast muscle in cold water. Ichthyosaurs were among the most successful marine predators in the history of vertebrate life. They occupied the open ocean for over 150 million years. Then, roughly 90 million years ago, in the late Cretaceous, they disappeared. The causes remain debated: changing ocean chemistry, shifting prey availability, competitive displacement. What is not debated is the result. The torpedo-shaped, high-speed, open-water pursuit predator vanished from the reptile lineage entirely. The sharks remained. They had been there before the ichthyosaurs evolved. They were still there after the ichthyosaurs were gone. And then, tens of millions of years later, the mammals walked into the sea. Around 50 million years ago, in the warm, shallow waters along the ancient Tethys Sea, in what is now Pakistan and India, small four-legged mammals began spending more time in the water. The earliest known cetacean ancestors, animals like Pakicetus and Ambuloxidus, were semi-aquatic. They had functional legs. They had a long tail unsuited for aquatic propulsion. They waded. They hunted in shallows. They looked nothing like what they would become. If you had watched Pakicetus from the shore, you would have seen something that resembled a large, awkward dog splashing after fish. Nothing about it predicted what the ocean would do to its descendants. But the same physics that shaped the shark and sculpted the ichthyosaur were waiting. The same drag penalties, the same reward for streamlining, the same merciless cost-benefit equation applied to every limb that caught the current, every contour that disrupted flow. Within roughly 20 million years, the hind limbs disappeared externally. The forelimbs flattened into pectoral flippers. The spine began undulating vertically, unlike fish and ichthyosaurs, which flex laterally, but the external result was the same hydrodynamic profile. A dorsal fin appeared, not supported by bone or cartilage rays, but built from dense connective tissue, performing the same stabilizing function as the dorsal fin of a shark. The nostrils migrated to the top of the skull and became a blowhole. The body smoothed, narrowed at the peduncle, and drove a horizontal tail fluke through the water with the same crescent-shaped geometry that the shark and the ichthyosaur had carried before it. By the time you reach a modern bottlenose dolphin, the transformation is complete. The same tapered hull, the same crescent tail, the same narrow peduncle, the same forward-set eyes. Feature by feature, a mammal, endothermic, air-breathing, lactating, descended from something that once ran across solid ground, rebuilt the body of a fish, and the ocean still was not finished. The orca is technically a dolphin, the largest member of the family Delphinidae, but that label conceals what it has become. Orcas are apex predators that kill great white sharks. Researchers have documented pods flipping sharks upside down to induce tonic immobility, then extracting the liver with what field biologists describe as surgical precision, leaving the rest of the carcass. They hunt in coordinated groups, communicate with pod-specific dialects, and transmit learned hunting strategies across generations. Different populations specialize on different prey, some on salmon, some on seals, some on whales, some on sharks. And these specializations are cultural, not genetic. The torpedo body, pushed to its mammalian ceiling, warm-blooded, socially intelligent, big-brained, and dangerous enough to make the original model, the shark, 450 million years in the making, into a food source. But the convergence reaches beyond these three famous lineages. Tuna are bony fish, teleosts, a completely separate radiation from sharks. And yet the bluefin tuna carries an almost identical body plan, fusiform, crescent-tailed, narrow pedunculed, capable of sustained, high-speed transoceanic swimming. And like lamnid sharks, bluefin tuna have independently evolved regional endothermy, warm swimming muscles, warm brains, warm eyes, using a different vascular architecture to achieve the same thermal result. Two fish lineages separated by over 400 million years of evolution, building the same warm engine inside the same cold water torpedo. Among extinct marine reptiles, the pattern kept emerging in lineages that never reached the ichthyosaur level of convergence, but were unmistakably heading there. Mosasaurs, enormous predatory lizards that ruled late Cretaceous seas after the ichthyosaurs vanished, evolved elongated, streamlined bodies with reduced limbs and powerful tails. Not perfectly fusiform, not yet, but the trajectory was clear. Given more geological time, the ocean may well have finished the sculpture. And then there were the metriorhynchids, fully marine crocodilians from the Jurassic that lost their heavy armor, developed smooth hydrodynamic skin, evolved paddle-shaped limbs, and grew a downturned tail supporting a crescent-shaped fin. Crocodilians, animals whose modern descendants are armored ambush predators built for rivers and shorelines. The Jurassic Ocean took that body plan and began pressing the torpedo into it. The lineage went extinct before the process was complete. The direction was not in doubt. The pattern is not coincidence. It is not homage. It is not a trend. It is a geometry forced by physics on any lineage that enters open water and hunts at speed. The constraints are not negotiable. The density of water determines the cost of drag. The distribution of prey determines the need for sustained pursuit. The fluid dynamics of a body moving through a medium 800 times denser than air determine which shapes pay the lowest cost for the highest velocity. And every lineage that faces those constraints, fish, reptile, mammal, separated by hundreds of millions of years, and by every fundamental difference vertebrate biology can produce, converges on the same form. There is something disquieting about that level of repetition. It suggests that evolution is less inventive than people want it to be. We describe it in language that implies creativity, adaptive radiation, innovation, diversification. But the torpedo body says something colder. When the environment is specific enough and the physics are rigid enough, evolution does not diversify. It narrows. It funnels every lineage that enters the same problem through the same bottleneck and produces the same output, regardless of the input. A fish enters, a torpedo comes out, a reptile enters, a torpedo comes out, a mammal enters, a torpedo comes out. The ancestry is irrelevant. The physiology is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is whether the body can move through dense fluid fast enough to eat. Researchers call this a functional attractor, a solution that multiple unrelated systems are pulled toward when the constraints are strong enough. The torpedo is not one lineage's invention. It is the ocean's specification. Evolution does not remember building this body before. It has no memory. It has no preference. It does not admire what it made last time and choose to make it again. It does not need to. The ocean remembers for it. The physics have not changed in 500 million years. Water is still dense. Prey is still fast. Drag still punishes every body that is not smooth, tapered, and narrow where the tail meets the thrust. And every time a new lineage enters that water and begins hunting, no matter what it was before, no matter how recently it walked on land or breathed open air. The same forces begin working on it, shaping the same profile, demanding the same engine, arriving at the same answer. A fish built it first. A reptile rebuilt it. A mammal rebuilt it again. A different fish rebuilt it independently. Marine crocodilians started building it before they ran out of time. 500 million years. 500 million years of the same question, asked by the same medium, answered by the same shape, in lineages that never knew the others existed. And somewhere right now, in some coastal estuary or warming shallow, some four-legged animal is spending a little more time in the water than its parents did. We do not know which one. We may never notice, but the ocean will. Not because the ocean is creative, because the ocean only allows one design.